Hey y'all, this video is to show you how to change a transmission in a 2002 to 2006, probably 2006, V6 Camry. And I've already started to do some work on it. This transmission stopped, it started slipping in reverse. It actually would slip out of gear and then bang back in, and the RPMs would flare up and then boom, they'd go back into gear. So I decided to put a used one in it. This body's a 2002 with about 154,000 miles. I purchased a used transmission here from M140 Auto Parts in South Haven, Michigan. It was about a 300-mile trip there and back from Columbus, Ohio here, but it was worth it. It had lower miles than what I had, about 115,000, and it was $600. And on the car, like I said, I've begun to do some work already. I've removed battery, airbox, shift cable, all this wiring. I got up out of the way. Used a bungee cord to hold the big wiring loom. Starter is off, and I've got some bell housing bolts out. And I don't know if you can see down in there. Not sure if I can see down in there, but let's see. There's one there. There's one a little bit higher up. You saw the one down in there. There's two for the starter. Another bell housing bolt up in there. And then there's two more. It's pretty dark, I'm sorry guys. Two more down in there if you can see them. Anyway, I think I need to pull this dipstick tube off. So there's room, it's pretty tall. And need to take off the cooler lines that are down here. I've already removed the engine mount bolt for the front mount down through there. So next I think we're going to go, one more thing, I don't know if you can see it from here, but down there is a bolt for the steering shaft. I'll have to remove that as well so I can manipulate the subframe. So that's it for up here. I'll show you down below. Now I'm underneath the car. Hopefully you have enough light to see everything. Let me get back a little bit. So here's the front bumper, and this is the right front corner. Here's the subframe. I work for Honda. These are called a stay. Call that a stay, but if you want to call it a bracket, that's fine. Anyway, my plan is to loosen this subframe bolt and that subframe bolt back there and take off the stay. I'll probably loosen all the stay bolts, remove that subframe bolt and that subframe bolt, and have this subframe like tilt downwards and touch the floor. I'm doing that for several reasons. Number one, I don't really want to I don't want to split the power steering pump. I don't want to split the power steering system just to make more fluids and more mass. Two, it's something I can't really reach all of that just the way the car is. Two, someone told me that they've done it like that before at a Toyota dealer. And three, I don't know. I'm just all about doing things more simple. So if it can work, it can work. Next few things I have to disconnect are I got to take this A-pipe, exhaust pipe off, and I hope you can see. But the actual like connections, these bolts and everything actually look really nice. I got a bad angle, I'm sorry everyone. And these up in here, if you can see them, it's pretty dark. Those actually don't look like there's much corrosion at all in them. This is the front of the engine, this is the back of the engine here. Where am I? There we are. So I'm not really anticipating having any issues there. I need to take this bracket off here. Now down yonder at the rear where the catalyst meets the B-pipe, this I guess we'd call the A-pipe, down there's the B-pipe, those are a little bit more rusty, and I've already sprayed them with some penetrant last night. So next thing I'm going to do is pull this A-pipe off. I'm going to disconnect these oxygen sensors, and after that I'm going to start loosening up some things, but I'll tell you what I'm doing along the way. I just ended up draining the fluid too. There's the pan, and the fluid actually didn't look bad at all, but I don't know, something going on inside the unit anyway. And I'm going to do a little bit more work, and I'll be back. Well, I've got a little progress done. I've got the A pipe off. That's the rear catalyst. All the way down there is like the B pipe. Trying to get you some light. And you can still see the 2 bolts that I had to cut. Tried to get them to unbolt and they wouldn't, just too much rust. Up through here above the subframe, get you some more light here. It's getting dark out. Oh, somewhere. Anyway, that's the bottom of the engine mount. Wait, there's the exhaust there. 1 stud came out, 1 stud stayed in. So next, and I got the bracketry off here for the A pipe. So next I got to go in here and I can't see where I'm at anymore. Sorry, guys. Get the torque converter bolts out. There. Get the torque converter bolts next. And we're coming along. Things are working. Alrighty. Next quick update is I've done a lot of work down below, which you'll see, or maybe you've already seen, depending on how I edit this. Next big step is to attach some kind of engine holding fixture to this engine. I've picked 3 major points. One is I'm going to run a board from here across, and I'm going to put a strap underneath that intake manifold. And I apologize, it's dark in here. It's pretty chilly this morning, so my door is closed. There's a metal strap that goes from this intake manifold. You probably can't even see it, but well, once I get some better light, I'll show you. Intake manifold down to the head, so it's going to be strong enough. 2, I think I might put a strap underneath this intake manifold to a piece of wood running this way. And lastly, this engine mount down here, right underneath here, I'll put that strap. So I'm going to cut me a couple pieces of wood and see if I can't build a little engine fixture. It's not going to be much. I'm pretty basic, pretty simple when it comes with wood, but it should hold everything in. So we'll try it out. Okay, I know this looks jinky, but I think it's going to work okay. I've got 1 long piece of wood across both damper housings, and I have 1 strap here going underneath the intake manifold. And again, there's a metal strap, metal bracket that goes from the manifold down to the head, so that's going to be a pretty strong point. 2, I've got a strap going from here around the exhaust manifold where it meets the head, not even just like out here. I mean, it's up right at the cylinder head. This is a little bit looser, so that when the engine and transmission kind of come down on this end, a little bit of slack here, a little bit of slack up there as well. And last but not least, this goes down through the engine mount and back up. This one's a little bit tighter. I want to have it drop a little bit, but not so much. And I can always use a floor jack on the transmission to raise or lower the transmission side and get the straps adjusted perfectly so everything will be held. I'm hoping it's going to work. If it doesn't, I will have inadvertently removed the engine out of this car as well. So I don't know. I'll let you know how it happens, how it works. Well, things have progressed pretty good, and I got all the underneath stuff off. And if you can see, I ended up having to pull the subframe bolts on that side too and put jack stands on the subframe. And I took these bolts out and I've lowered the subframe down about halfway. I'm actually quite surprised it's not coming more. I believe it's because the Staby link is on the other side of the car, and the lower control arm, I think it's putting something under a bind. But I'm happy with how far the engine emission have come down. I don't know if y'all can see up there. I got my, probably not. I got the straps up top and everything. I think I'm probably going to be okay with it the way it is. And I don't know if you can see this, but the subframe is actually kind of springy. I can't get it down anymore. It's somehow, I got the engine mount loose or on the other side and everything, I don't know. But anyway, the Staby bar here might be an issue, but I think I have enough space to the front. I'm going to probably try to take the last bolt out and drop this thing. So anyway, wish me luck. Well, I wish I could have filmed that, but oh boy, was my hands full. Alright, transmission sideways on the jack. There's the engine compartment from underneath. It's out. And I didn't even lose the converter, which is good. So, I don't know, maybe my wife can help me video it going back in, but I really had my hands full. I knocked it loose with the pry bar, got it onto the jack when the jack was on this side of the subframe, let the transmission slide across the subframe and kind of rest on it. The subframe was touching part of the jack. Then I pulled the transmission to the other side of the subframe on the jack pad now and pretty much just twisted it and dropped it. So, oh boy, she fit out. It was interesting, let's put it like that, but it's out. So, we'll go from there. Okay, well, I've been a busybody working underneath this car. Transmission and engine are together, and I'm in the process of getting the bell, or not the, well, I got 3 bell housing bolts in. That one there, there. Those are small 14mm head bolts, and I have one 17mm bolt up top. Next, I'm putting in the 6 bolts for the torque converter, but I wanted to show you something. This drive plate would be spinning. A little bit of light for you, maybe. This drive plate would be spinning with the engine running. Torque converter is inside here. You can probably see it revolving. But in order to get all 6 bolts in without having to loosen them to make them line up again, there's a little trick. Now, Hondas usually have one bolt hole that's narrower. But I looked, and also, I'll get some light here. All 6 of these bolt holes are the same diameter. However, I noticed one bolt had a different coloring on it. And maybe I can just set this camera down and show you. I've got 5 bolts like this. There's just a typical standard. It's got blue Loctite on it, and it's just a standard shank bolt. It's the same diameter all the way down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those, okay? We had this one extra bolt that I took out and didn't know why it was a different color. And I noticed, again, I'll get some more light here. This little flashlight's on top of my head. This bolt has a shank that gets larger down here towards the washer. And that actually takes up space inside this hole up here. Sorry for my crappy camera work. So if you put that one bolt up in the hole first and torque it off, you basically have to turn your torque converter and find out where one of the threaded things are. Okay. If you put this bolt in first and tighten it, all of the other 5 bolts will line up. Anyway, and one thing I want to tell you also is, having worked at a transmission shop and dealership and other places, there's 2 things I want to say about joining the engine and transmission together. One is the fact that this torque converter will still spin when all the bell housing bolts are in. That's very, very important. 2 is, when you're putting the transmission onto the engine, don't ever use bolts to force them together. If you got to use bolts to force them together, something's wrong. In this particular case, I left the axle in, which probably fought me, but it actually kind of helped get it lined up. But once you get the engine and transmission close together, you should be able to push it by hand and get the 2 very, very close together, within less than a 1/4 inch together, or else there's something wrong. Keep that in mind. Anyway, that's my little trick for getting them to mate together, and also the torque converter bolts. And I'm sorry I didn't get much video of this transmission going in, but I was really, really busy and having to exert a lot of force and have my wife operate the jack for me, and I just couldn't do it. Anyway, at this point, exhaust is still off, but I've got the subframe bolts in, there and there, all 4 corners. Another one here, the other one's behind my head. And next thing next, just get all the bell housing bolts in and these torque converter bolts, so she's coming along. Alrighty, I'm back into the car. I said before I had to cut the exhaust. There's the exhaust bolts. Here's one of the bolts I had to cut off. And there's the 2 pipes I got back together. Went to the hardware store and bought, let me see if I can grab these, just some standard old nuts and bolts. Sorry, I only got 2 hands. Anyway, there's the new nuts and bolts. Gonna put those in there, and that should get that together. And we're together. I probably should have used stainless fasteners, but I think those bolts are going to outlive the rest of that A-pipe. Also, I should have used a new gasket in between those 2, but the old one looked okay, and I don't know. Everything's together tight, so it should be okay. If there's any leaks, I can address that later. I've been pretty busy on this car. On this side, I've got the tie rod end, stabilizer link, and ball joint back together. And then down here, I've got the subframe stays on, or brackets, one at each corner. And I got the 2 back ones. I don't know if you can see that or not. And this one back here. Got the door open today, the garage door, because it's a little nicer out, a little warmer. I got the exhaust pipe on as well, like I said earlier, because I showed you guys the 2 bolts back there. I think the next thing I got to do is probably, just throw the undercovers on. There's one that has to go on this side, up into there, and then the 2 that go across the front. So that's a few clips and a couple bolts, not a big deal. Gotta throw those on. I think that's about it. This pan's a little scraped up from moving around everywhere, but it's okay. A little bit of fluid back here. Might take a can of brake cleaner, just hose it off. I spilled some. I took a picture, but it didn't come out. The transmission fell off the jack a couple times, and I lost a little oil out of the diff. Even though I had drained the mission, there's always some in there. But anyway, that's it. I'll get this thing buttoned up underneath. Well, to test fire the car yesterday, last night I had to put the airbox and the battery in temporarily, and I've now taken them all out, and I have to work on this thing down here in the steering shaft, and I don't think I'll be able to put the camera down there to capture it. Maybe I will. Let's see. What's that even looking at? There it is, I guess. It's okay. Oh, my hand's in the way. I got the front wheel straight, and I got the steering wheel, I think, straight. So I gotta go down and put it on. Seems to be about where it ought to be. And let me check the wheel, make sure the wheel's straight. Okay, I've got that down on there. Now I'm blocking my light with the camera again. Anyway, steering shaft is on. Now I've got to go, see the bolt didn't line up, the hole. So I got to go over here and turn the steering wheel a little, whoops, oh crap. And hopefully you can see in here too, I'm kind of holding the light. Underneath here, maybe that'll work. Under here is where the steering shaft comes through. So I had to take off this clamp and this rubber plug in order to get the shaft up and off the steering rack. And this bolt here, I don't know if you can see that. No, I can see that bolt right here, that hole. I gotta put that bolt in and tighten it down too. The steering shaft to be locked in real good where it ought to be. Anyway, I'll get that done. Alrighty, and I've got that bolt in. Sorry again for my crappy lighting. That concludes all the major parts of this. Like I said, I still gotta get the airbox in permanently, as well as the battery. So we're gonna go ahead and do that, and go to another fire, and go on a test drive. And beforehand, I'll finalize the fluid level. But otherwise, I think we're gonna be good to go. One last thing I did want to show you too. I don't even know if you can see down there. The one last bell housing bolt that's down here. I can't even see anything. Maybe. Take this headlight off my head. And just show you where things are here. I've got my ratchet down there on that bolt, and it's just best to put it kind of underneath this intake manifold and everything. The lighting's bad, I'm sorry. Anyway, you just got to reach underneath all the intake, all these water pipes, or water hoses and fuel hose, and it's really not too bad to get. A little hard to break free, but anyway, that just shows where it's at down there. Way down there.